Yeah, that's right. We're about to go into a topic that I think a lot of you guys are probably interested in, dating towards marriage, all right? All right. All right, guys. I just would like to take this opportunity to introduce Pastor Tim. He's going to go ahead and lead us into the workshop of preparing for marriage.
Can you hear me? Testing? Can you hear me? Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much. My name is Pastor Tim. I know some of you. Those who don't know me, hopefully through the course of the workshop and throughout the rest of the rally, I can meet you as well. I know there's some friends here from Garland and the other DFW Metroplex area, so I'd love to spend some time with you and catch up with you. But my name is Pastor Tim. I live here in Dallas. I just moved here several years ago, so I'm getting used to the whole Texas thing, but it's really great to be here. So one of the workshop, when we're talking about having a workshop, we talked about different concepts, different ideas, and obviously this concept, an issue of dating came up, and I said, do they really want to hear that again? And we said, well, let's send out some questions, and we had a lot of questions, okay? So it sounds like it's a topic that everyone's at least somewhat interested in. However, when I was talking to Mushabeing, I said, I have a workshop that I usually talk about, and it's not so much dating, because I'm older now. I just can't relate with you guys in terms of dating, seriously. So I've been going and doing some workshops on what it's called as preparing for marriage. In other words, you're kind of past dating. Now you're serious, okay? You're serious about settling down. You're serious about finding a mate and a spouse, and you're stepping into this process and time in your life where you say, you know what, I'm ready to get married. But Mushabeing was telling me, he says, well, to be honest with you, isn't that the same thing as dating? And I said, I guess that's true, okay? So I just want to tell you that that's going to be my focus, but we'll talk about that process of dating the best we can. But just so you know, this topic probably would take a lifetime to even complete. It would take a lifetime to explain, and then we still wouldn't be done, and we still wouldn't even have all the answers. That's how complicated and big this concept is. And we're going to try to do it in 30, 40 minutes, okay? So it's not going to answer all your questions, but I hope it gives you some fundamental principles that you can see where God has intended for marriage, what God has an intention for a husband and a wife to be together, and to help you in your thinking as we move forward, okay? So this is my family. Where's the clicker? Here it is. This is my family. It's outdated already. That's me on the right. That's my wife to your left, my right. Then that's my daughter-in-law, and then my two sons. Okay, I have two sons. But our family has grown since then. Now I have another daughter-in-law, so my youngest son has been married. And then we have two grandchildren, okay? So I told you I was old, okay? I have kids and I have grandkids, okay? So you should call me back, okay, all right? Or okay? That's how old I am, okay? But don't go to go yet, all right? That's where I draw the line, all right? Don't go there yet. So this is my family. So I have some experience about marriage, okay? I have some experience about dating, because I was a youth. I grew up in the church. I'm a PK. My father was a pastor. I grew up in the Vietnamese church. I went to youth camps. I went to youth rallies. I went to college. I did the whole deal, okay? Whatever you've done or thought you could about doing, multiply that by 10, and you're close to where I am at, okay? So I have some experience, good and bad, all right? So it's a complicated issue. It's a complicated topic. And I read some of your questions. Your questions are excellent, okay? I don't have the answers, I'll just tell you right now, okay? But I'm hoping that you can get to a point where you can go to the source of these answers, okay? And that's our Heavenly Father and the Bible, okay? So at the end of this topic, I'm going to close with just how I started. At the end, it's all about God, okay? So we'll try to get there in between somehow. All right, so I'm going to go through some principles, and we're going to talk about them. They're going to ask some friends to come up here, and we're going to try to answer some of your questions. So that'll be the format, all right? So Preparing for a wedding or marriage. I do, some couples ask me to officiate their weddings, which I'm more than happy to do, but I have some criteria. I said, if you want me to do your wedding, then there's a couple things. I won't tell you one until you actually ask me to do your wedding, then we'll talk about it. But the second one that I always ask is this. You have to do some pre-marriage counseling sessions with me, all right? That doesn't mean you come and you convince me that you guys should marry. That's not the purpose. Or you come and hopefully I give you all the answers to help you in your marriage. That's not the purpose. The purpose is that I want you to interact with one another. I facilitate that time, ask you certain questions so you two, couple, okay, can hopefully expand on some ideas and some concepts, some issues that maybe you've talked about before, but you haven't fleshed out thoroughly. You haven't thought about it thoroughly. And that's really what the whole session's about, okay? So these are some of the concepts that I bring up, but I want to share with you this afternoon. There's a difference between preparing for a wedding as opposed to preparing for a marriage. Agree? A wedding is one day. Unless you're in India, it's a week, okay? But it's a one day. I've been to an Indian wedding. It's a lot of fun, by the way, okay? But a wedding is one day. A marriage is a lifetime, right? But do you know people spend more time in preparing for the wedding than they do for the marriage? I want you to sink that in for a sec. People spend more time and money on a wedding than they do for a marriage. And the wedding is a one-day thing, but a marriage is a lifetime. So you got to start with that principle. Okay, you guys are thinking about dating, you think about a guy, girl. You got to be thinking about, am I prepared to step into a marriage? Okay? So, weddings are a $20 billion year industry. Okay? More than 1 million copies of bridal magazines are sold each month. There's more statistics than data. There's wedding fairs, okay? People can go to the Dallas Convention Center, right, and just spend time and money and whatever on gowns and whatnot, okay, for weddings. Weddings, on average, cost $30,000, and this number obviously is outdated. I got this from 2013. That number now is probably twice as much, okay? But that just gives you an order of magnitude. How much money do you spend on a wedding for a one-day thing? What does that entail? Okay, you got the venue, you got the photographer, you got the event planner, you got the band, you got the DJ, you got the florist, you got the videographer, you got the dress, you got the tuxedo, you got the cake, you got the site, you got the musicians, you got the invitations, you got the limousine, you got the party favors. You get the deal. You've been to weddings. It's a lot of money, a lot of time. Okay, and I see so many couples just think about this wonderful day, and it is a wonderful day, okay? And I get it. Some of you girls, you've been dreaming of this for all your life. You want that day to be perfect. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. I want this to be perfect. Guess what? Nothing's perfect, all right? If that's the expectation for you, great. But why can't you set that expectation for your marriage? What I see and what I've read and what I've researched, couples are concentrating on creating more of an experience for their guests, okay? I'm sure there's some married couples in here, okay? How many times have I heard, well, we want it to be beautiful, okay? We want people to come and be overwhelmed, okay? And they take, their focus is that when people come, they can just be the venue. It's beautiful. They want destination weddings. It's got to be by the ocean. It's got to be on a cliff overlooking, the Pacific Ocean. It's got to be outside. It's got to have trees. It's got to have sun. On and on and on. Why? You're more worried about creating this experience for your guests, okay? Couples are more concerned about venue than tradition. Only 33% of weddings are conducted in a church, right? I mean, when I was growing up, a wedding was always in a church. Now it's like, well, it doesn't have to be a church. Now, I'm not saying it has to be, but I'm just saying this is the thinking. This is the mindset. It's more about the venue. It's more about the people experience. It's more about what people can leave, with the party, the food, and the music, and the atmosphere. And what I'm really saying is where does God come into all this, right? The church should be an aspect of your spiritual walk and spiritual life, that when you get to that point, that God is somewhere in this, and he plays a major role in this, right? And what's happening is God is being pushed aside. Yeah, I've done a couple weddings. One was my son, right? He wanted to be outside. I said, fine, okay, but we got to have a service. We have to have a wedding ceremony. It has to be worshipful. I want the wedding ceremony where people come, and it's not just you two. It's just not your bridal and your groomsmen party, and it's not just your friends. I want people to come and they see God. Okay? That has to be part of your thinking. Because if you don't do it at your wedding, what makes you think you're going to do it in your marriage? If you can't do it there. There's an example of this. I remember when I first took my driver's license, right? This is a long time ago. I don't know how they do it today, okay? And there was a guy in front of me, and he did perfect. I mean, I watched him go through the obstacle course, and I said, wow, he aced it, right? And then he came out, and the policeman fired him, or the policeman failed him, right? And I said, wow, what happened? And he just mumbled and walked away. So now I figured I'm going to fail too, because I couldn't drive as well as he did. When I sat in there, I went through it. I was very cautious, and I think I even scraped a little bumper or a little cone. I figured I'm done, right? I get back, and then the policeman says, you know what, you passed. I said, really? I mean, the guy in front of me was much better. How come you failed him, but you passed me? He says, you know what? He was too confident. He felt like he could do it, and he went too fast, and if he does that in front of me in a test, what's he going to do alone? And that stuck with me. Because what we do in terms of the presence of God, and what we do with him being right there, and if we can't honor, okay, our faith and our commitment to our Heavenly Father, what makes we're going to do it when so-called God is not around, or when so-called we put God aside? Friends, if you don't start right, if you don't start with the foundation, if you don't start with these principles right now, by the way, don't wait till you find a guy or a girl and says, now I'm going to start dating, now I'm going to bring God involved. You're late. We're going to talk about that in a second. It starts now. Before all these questions, well, when should I dump her? Or when should I dump him, all right? Or when should I find out that this isn't working out? Friends, if you're asking me that question, you're late. You're late. Couples are foregoing some traditions to modernize their nuptials. Some people go personal vows, which I don't have a problem, okay? You can talk about the sky and the ocean and the colors and your mood. I don't have a problem with that. But somewhere along the line there's some honors and commitments that God has instilled in us as we make this commitment and oath before God. And if the pastor doesn't help you put that together, you're just going to be rambling, okay? So even when I do a wedding and they want to have their own personalized vows, I said, that's fine. I got to read it first, okay? And two is you're still going to have to, repeat after me on some of the vows that I make sure you have certain principles in there. Some weddings eliminate sermons. Obviously, if I'm doing the wedding, I'm going to have to share something that's about the Word of God. But I've been to weddings, and I have heard nothing in there about God and Scriptures. Like I mentioned before, some weddings, they don't even want a worship service. I said, no, we want this done like in 10 minutes. Well, how can you really set a ceremony environment that you're making as a commitment to a person for the rest of your life and do it in 10 minutes? Like I said before, to me, a wedding is not just a wedding service, it's a worship service. God has to be evident in that service. Okay. And then the other thing I see a lot is emphasis on a reception rather than the wedding ceremony. Oh yeah, don't worry, no one goes to the wedding ceremony, they all come to the reception at 6, right? And some people do. Some guests do that, but that just shouldn't eliminate you and your couple and your spouse and your family to honor the ceremony. Okay? All right. So some of the things that I want to share with you as you start off in this dating journey, okay, is what do you believe? Okay? What do you believe? And I put that question, what do you believe, ... And that's the question. What do you believe about everything? Okay? What do you believe as a person? What do you believe as a fundamental principle on how God has a plan and purpose for marriage? What is the definition of marriage in God's eyes? How does that coordinate with your beliefs as a wedding? What does God, how does he describe or share in scriptures what it means to have a relationship that's godly? What do you believe? And that's really what I start out with my sessions. What do you believe? So obviously, if you're having a trouble answering that from the get-go, then my question will be: are you really serious? Or let me back up. Are you ready to have what I call a serious relationship with another person? That's why I hope you're going to church every week. That's why I hope you're reading the Bible on a daily basis. That's why you're spending time in devotions with God on a daily basis. Are you preparing yourself on what you believe? Because listen, if you're not firm on your belief, and you find someone that you like because they're cute, she's pretty, and blah, 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 their beliefs will end up changing your beliefs. And that's very, very dangerous. What do you believe? It starts now. It starts right now. What do you believe? Okay. Second, what you believe, how is that based on scriptures? It's one thing to believe, but how do you handle scriptures? Do you understand what God means when he says a husband and a wife? Do you understand what it means when God says, I do not tolerate and I hate divorce? What does it mean for a wife to submit to her husband? What does it mean for a husband to love his wife? What does it mean for you to glorify God? You have to understand what that means first. You see where I'm going with this? If you're thinking about all the other stuff before you answer those questions, you are not ready to date. I'll just be honest with you. It has nothing to do with age, has nothing to do with culture, has nothing to do with traditions. It starts there with you, all right? So worship and devotions. This is a big topic, but I really believe it's the core fundamental principle that all of you have to grasp. And when I say worship, I don't mean going to church and singing a song, okay? What I mean is that you put God and God first in every aspect of your life. How you think, how you talk, how you act, how you live. It is worshipful. You are submitting yourself and honoring God. You're submitting yourself and you're lifting up God. You're putting God first in everything. And we talked about career and jobs and all that earlier, which is great, okay? But you can't even put that before God, all right? How much is your life worshipful? Let me give you an example. When my kids were younger, I have two boys, and they were just rowdy. They always, created life havoc for me. And I would come home from work, and they would just make a mess of the place, right? And they would, put their stuff in the garage. I'd open my garage door, and then there's that stuff, their toys in the garage. So I get out, and I got to move their stuff so I can pull my car in. Happens once, I get upset. Once, twice, I'm irritated. So one time I just told my kids, I said, I saw it happen. I went out and decided to have this as a teachable moment for my kids. So I sit them down, and I said, look, Dad works all day long. I come home, I'm tired. The last thing I want to do is open up the garage door and then move your guys' stuff and pull it in. They say, yes, Dad, right? Guess what happens in 2 or 3 days? Come home, same thing, right? Same thing. And then now that's it. This is now my chance for corporal punishment, right? I've just cause now because I've told them not what to do. And then at that moment, God stopped me. He said, do you know how many men, how many husbands would love to come home and have to move toys of their children? So I just had a worship moment right there with God. I sat there and said, God, thank you for what I have. Thank you for my children. Thank you for my family. See, that to me is a worship moment. I'm not talking about in a church and we're singing a prayer. That's great, don't get me wrong. But do you have worship moments between you and God every single day? Every single day. So, devotions, we know these terms, okay? Yes. Do we pray every night? Do we read the Bible every night? But if you're doing it just to say, I do it, and I'll talk about later, this is my message. If you're doing it because you feel like it's a responsibility, you do it because you're taught to do it, you do it because you think it's the right thing to do, that's not the reason you should be doing it. You're doing it because right now, God is everything to me. I do it right now because if I don't have this devotion, if I don't have this worship with God, I cannot function. That's where I want you to get. Okay? So that's when I say, worship is not just a corporate worship, it's a personal devotion. Personal worship. Friends, you cannot have corporate worship that's meaningful until you have personal worship. Okay? All right. I'm going on a tangent. How important is worship together as husband and wife? It's extremely important. Personal worship is very important, but a worship between husband and wife is extremely, extremely important. One of the other criteria that I have when couples come to me and do pre-marriage counseling is I said from now on, now to the day you get married, I want you guys to pray with each other every day. That's a requirement. And I said, even if it's a text, even if it's just a phone call, but you have to get in the habit of doing this every day. It could be 10 seconds, but you have to do it between now and the wedding day. And obviously my goal is that they do it beyond that, okay? Friends, I've had couples that have gone through some tough times during the pre-marriage sessions, okay? They would say, oh, things are getting bad, Pastor. We're fighting, we're in conflict, and we're disagreeing. I said, oh, by the way, how are you doing with your prayer time each day? And they looked at each other and said, funny, we haven't. I said, I'll tell you what, all these other issues you just put aside, you start back on your praying, and let's come back in a week. And it's amazing. They said things have been much better because we've been praying. Prayer works, friends, okay? It works. It has to be vital in your marriage as husband and wife. Okay? We'll have time for questions later. I'm just trying to buzz through here as quickly as I can. So, again, a personal devotion. Obviously, the next step, God willing, if you have a family with children, then you have to have family devotions. And by the way, whose responsibility is it, do you think, from a biblical standpoint, to lead the family in a spiritual sense? Husband, father. That's scripturally based, and I really believe that is imperative for a family. Husbands, that's your responsibility. Okay? And now let's go a little back to the dating thing. My opinion, if gentlemen, I'll just call gentlemen because I'm going to say you guys are mature. If you're serious about finding a mate, a wife, the best thing you can do to make yourself attractive is to be a godly man. It's not getting the right haircut. It's not getting the right clothes. It's not getting the right car. Okay? You first become a godly man, meaning God sense and that everything that your being is to portray and live your life as an image of a godly man. You become much more attractive. You're saying, well, some of you are saying, Pastor, it hasn't worked. I said, well, probably it hasn't worked because you're trying to find ungodly women. But a godly woman will find a godly man attractive. Can I at least hear one amen out of a woman on that? Okay? All right? Okay? Now, if you're looking for something else, if you're looking for an ungodly woman, then yeah, you can be ungodly. But is that what you want? Okay? So start there, okay? I'm not saying that solves all your problems, okay? But it starts there, all right? It starts there. Oh, by the way, and women, married women here can either agree or disagree. I hope you agree. I think women, even though they will do the legwork to get a family into a spiritual devotion or a family time of prayer, but they still want their husbands to be the one that portrays that. In other words, I've seen families where the mother will say, honey, we haven't had a family devotion in a while. Can you make time and let's do that tonight? And, you're probably watching ESPN or you're playing a game or whatever. Oh, I don't want to. But she'll say, no, I think we need to, but you go tell the kids. In other words, she'll give you that honor because she understands how important that is to the role of the family. Am I making sense on that? By the way, you remember I told you, Genesis says women submit to your husbands, and a lot of people just say, what does that mean? And I don't agree with it, or women be a helper. That's what that means. A wife isn't saying, well, I'll do whatever you want. Okay, but what she's saying is that there's some things that I give you. There's some things that I give you that honor. There's some things that I lift and elevate you because that is important for the family. Okay, and reading the Bible together, I wish I had more time to discuss, but I think you understand that, okay? Husband and wife relationships. What is the meaning of headship and submission in the Bible in our marriage? And I kind of addressed that earlier. Okay, God has stated that the husband is the head of the household. What does that mean? It means a lot of things, but primarily and from a spiritual standpoint. Husbands, you must be a godly man first and foremost. Then you will bless you in your job. It will bless you in your finances. It will bless you in your relationships at work and in the church and so forth. Okay, it starts there. Okay, what are the expectations about situations where you might be alone with someone else? Okay, now we're getting some practical issues. I have a rule, at least with me, and I encourage it to all men. Okay, that if you work in an environment where you go out to lunch with people or have meetings or travel, don't ever, okay, do any of that between you and a person of the opposite sex alone. Okay? It may be innocent, it may be part of the job, whatever justification you can make it, but don't ever do that. Okay? You're only setting yourself up. Okay? So that's a practical thing that I share. Some of the other things in that regard, I always tell couples, if you're married, okay, or even if you're in a serious relationship or engaged, don't spend time with your buddies, if you're a guy, or girls, if you're a girl, who are single. In other words, if I'm married, okay, and I take that weekly out with the guys, and we go out, and those guys are single, I highly discourage that. Why? Because when you're single, you think differently. When you're single, your views on women and relationships are different. You want to go to places, you want to say things, you want to see things that are outside the realm because you're in singlehood. Does that make sense? And you as a family, you as a husband or wife, you have to protect yourself and protect each other from those type of thinking and views and so forth. Okay? You should never, ever expose yourself to that. And even girls, oh, I'm going out with my friends, we're going shopping, whatever, that's fine, but who are those girls? Where are they in their walk with the Lord? Where are they in their life, their level of maturity? Are they dating? Are they hanging out? Are they serious? Are they married? So just put yourself out of harm's way, okay? Don't have your BFFs that are single, okay? Now, if it's other couples or other friends, then you go together. What I'm talking about is alone time, okay? If you're together, no problem. But don't go alone in those situations. All right, we could talk about them more, but maybe later. How are tasks shared in home? So this is some of the issues that I found out that are very practical, okay? Today in society, I think today's world, everybody shares, everybody works, everybody has time. The wife doesn't do everything. Okay, the husband has to take care. And I think most men are pretty good at that. I think YouTube has helped men know how to cook just by watching YouTube, right? All my sons know how to cook. Thank goodness for YouTube. My sons also do cleaning and household work. My oldest son, he changes the diapers for the kids. So I think that's different. Culturally, I think some families still get stuck in some of that, especially in our Vietnamese church, and that can cause some issues. So all we do is we talk about that. Okay, well, what are the expectations? Okay, what do you expect your husband and your wife to do together? Okay, so they should be shared. Okay. Like I said, what are the expectations of togetherness? Back what I told you before, sometimes people will say, well, I don't want to be together too much, and I get that. Okay, when you're first dating, you want to be together all the time. But after marriage, and those who've been married for a while, sometimes being together means too much together. Like, for example, my wife and I, we've been married for 30-some-odd years. I travel a lot. Sometimes I'm home for like a full week, and by the 5th day, my wife is like, hey, don't you have to travel? You know, in other words, you're around too much, okay? You need to go, okay? So togetherness is defined differently, but you have to understand what that means, okay? Like I said at the beginning, it's passionate, right? It's exciting, right? Oh, you hang up. I'll say goodbye. You say goodbye. I say goodbye. You never say goodbye, right? Yeah, all that stuff. You go through that period, which is fine, okay? But all I'm saying is that you can't just build a marriage on that type of emotional togetherness. Because, to be honest with you, being together too much initially ends up being harmful. You know why? Because you're always together, okay? And then when you have to be separate, that's when jealousy comes in. Oh, why are you talking to her, right? Why are you talking to him, all right? And I see a lot of that, unfortunately, I'll call it petty jealousness comes in. So understand what that means by together. Okay, this is more for a marriage thing. Like I said, it is not good to have friends without your spouse. I really, really encourage you as you get married and seriously married that you do things together with other people. That's what I'm talking about. Don't ever be exposed. I can't emphasize that enough. Don't set yourself up for failure or for temptation, okay? Protect each other. What will you do if one of you really likes to hang out with someone else and the other doesn't? Okay, we can't talk about that. Children can become a conduit to a relationship. If you look at statistics, a lot of couples today end up getting divorced after 25 plus years. You know why? Because their kids now are older and moved out. All those years, everything, every relationship, every conversation, every decision was about your children or through your children. That's why I call them a conduit. They never talk about each other anymore like they did before. Oh, the children. Guess what? When the children eventually leave, then what? Either you have to reacquaint yourself to your spouse or you split. And unfortunately, today in society, I see a lot of people splitting. It's really sad to see. All right? Lifestyle, you need to talk about, what kind of home, rent, where, how. I had a couple. One, they grew up in, it was Center City, Philadelphia. They went to school. They met there. He loved that urban life. He loved, the concrete jungle. He loved the vibrancy of the city. She hated it. She wanted to move out to the suburbs. And I said, you guys need to talk that through, okay? Okay. Don't say, well, we'll deal with it later. You have to talk about these issues in advance. Type of neighborhood, clothing, financing. We'll talk a little bit in a second. One of the things I always talk about with financing is one bank account, joint bank account. Do not have separate bank accounts. Okay. And don't have one person be the primary sole responsibility of keeping the bookkeeping. In other words, oh, she takes care of it. I don't know. Okay. No, you have to know. Okay. You both have to know. All right. Making money decisions, so forth and so on. Who's the main breadwinner? We talked about career. I saw some ladies who were pharmacists and teachers. Men, are you comfortable with your wife making more money than you? I know all my guys say, oh, sure I am. Wait till you get there. Okay? Some guys have a problem with that. All right? So we talk about it. The other thing is women working. I had a couple. They met in college. They both did very well. She got her master's in, I think, mathematics or physics. I can't remember. She ended up being a teacher. And she said, oh, God, I always wanted to be a teacher. I've got to work. That's what God called me to do, blah, blah, blah. And I said, sure, fine, whatever. That you worked hard. You should incorporate that. But it's funny. I saw them, I think, maybe 6 years later. They had 3 kids by then. And her name was Julie. I said, Julie, how you doing? She goes, oh, it's wonderful. I said, what are you doing? Oh, I stay at home, and I go to the kids' school lunch. I work. I help. I volunteer at the cafeteria for them. I said, wow. What about teaching? She goes, I just want to be home with my kids. That to me is everything. All I'm saying is this: at that time, her career was everything to her, but God changed when she had a family. Okay. So whatever your viewpoint is in terms of work or career, it may change when you have a family. That's all I'm saying. Okay. Okay, and then, job relocation, who determines that, how you make those decisions, and so forth. So this is more practical in terms of a pre-marriage session. But I just want to I want to share with you, do you see, this is a lot different than, okay, what Netflix movie do we rent, okay? Where do we go out to eat tonight? I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not saying you should go through that phase, but I'm saying if you're serious about where God is taking you next level in terms of a relationship, okay, it's a much more complicated. Okay, I'm going to skip through this in terms of entertainment. Conflict. Okay, so here are some other things. What makes you angry? Okay, I mean, we could talk about that all day, right? But the key is this. Does your wife or your husband know that? Does your spouse know that? I can't tell you how many times couples are fighting or they're angry, and I'm like, why are you guys fighting? And they're like, I don't know. She's upset. I don't know why she's upset, because since she's upset, I'm upset. So we're both upset. And then I said, well, why do you think she's angry? And then he tells me, and then I said, why are you angry? It's completely different than he thought. Okay. Conflict is so complicated, all right? Okay. But the key is that how do you handle your frustration, your anger is the key. How do you get to the point where you can have a sensible relationship and conversation to express and explain that, okay? One of the questions I heard was, well, how do I know if this is the right person, which is obviously a big topic. All I can ask you is this, is that if you guys are always in conflict and you don't know what the conflict is about and you don't know how to resolve it, you probably need to look at your relationship, okay? The Bible says don't let the sun go down when you're angry. So a lot of people say that. So I hear a lot of couples tell me that. It says, oh, we promise we'll never go to bed angry, okay? Well, good luck. You may be up all night, okay? My wife and I tried that one time. She tries it, all right, when we were early on, and she's the type that she has to resolve the issue, right? I'm the type of person that says, you know what, can we just talk about this tomorrow, right? No, we got to talk about it. So it was like late, and she's talking, and I'm trying to talk, and she's talking, and next thing you know, I'm snoring, all right? So she really got mad, and then we threw that principle out the window, okay? That's all I'm saying. Don't have these concrete rules. Oh, we will never go to bed angry, we never go to sleep angry, blah, blah, blah. And I said, fine, okay? Start there, but don't let that be the cornerstone of your relationship. What is your view of getting help from friends or counselors? Friends, I think in the Vietnamese culture, the Asian culture, there's a pride issue. We don't want to know people that we're having problems, We don't want to tell people our problems, No, that's a family thing. I think today in our society, God has given us a lot of godly people, counselors with a lot of wisdom that we can pull from, right? There's nothing wrong with that, okay? Reach out, okay? Extend to that if you need issues. All right, some sources of conflict. Let me go through real quick that I've seen. Financial, by the way, that's number one in the secular world as well, financial. 2 is children. A little bit what I talked about before. They can be your conduit of conversation, but they often be the sources of your conflict as well. Sexual intimacy or lack thereof. Okay, that's right up there. God has given marriages designed according to God, this wonderful gift of sexual intimacy. Okay? The problem is the world has ruined it. The world has tainted it. The world has corrupted it. And that's why sexual intimacy, sex in general, is bad. But if it's done according to God's way, it's the greatest gift that He's given to a married couple. All right? Time apart. I think Pastor Paul or someone said earlier about being away from the family. You guys got to talk about that through, okay? Okay. Even if you don't travel a lot, it's just your work ends up being your primary source of relationships. Be very careful, all right? If you know your friends and your coworker and your boss more than you know your spouse, there's a problem there. Family and friends, especially in the Vietnamese culture, when you marry your spouse, you're marrying their family, right? Okay, that can be good and can be bad, all right? So you need to talk about that. And expectations. If a wife expects her husband to make whatever it was, $100,000 a year, okay, then we need to talk that through, all right? If a husband expects her wife to be home and just cooking and not going outside and whatever, you need to talk that through. Okay, I'm using extremes, obviously, but there's expectations that everybody has. But if you don't talk about them, they will be a source of conflict. Household responsibilities, I talked about that a little bit earlier, okay? Irritating habits and personality conflicts. This is funny, okay? You know, in the beginning of a relationship, whatever she does is beautiful, right? She sings like an angel, right? She walks like on water. Her hair is like flowing honey, right? But then after you be for a while, it's like, man, she sings like a cat in pain, right? He was so handsome, right? Now it's like, man, does he ever wash his hair, okay? These things that before were beautiful, that were mesmerizing your euphoria of emotion and love and passion, become crystal clear, right? Once you're together. These habits and these conflicts that come out, okay? Well, let's talk about that a sec. I've heard some people say, well, that's why we date, to find this out, right? Okay, well, let's define date. What does date mean, right? My view with dating is you should not begin to date or use the word date until you're serious with that person and getting married. Did you catch that? That's my definition. You shouldn't start dating or calling someone you're dating until you're serious that you're going to marry that person. Wow. That seems like kind of jumping into a pretty serious commitment. Yes? So how do I get to know them? You can know a lot of people without dating them. There's this thing called friendship, all right? Being friends, all right? That exists, by the way, all right? 2 is I always hear, well, can I go on a lone date with someone? I said, why? You have a church, you have a youth group, you guys go out all the time. I know, I've seen it. You can know someone in a group setting. Actually, you know someone better than a group setting. Those who I've preached, you know the example I'm talking about, right? Because, you know, when you're alone with someone, they give you the best, right? They give you the best when you're alone. Yeah, I'm Mr. Chivalry. I'm Mr. Gentleman, you know. I'll open the door for you. I'll buy you a rose, you know, all that kind of mushy stuff, right? But ever see him like when he's playing with his buddies on video game or basketball? Then you get to see the real guy, right? How does he handle that hard foul, right? How does he handle when he gets the first guy, you know, whatever, shot in the game or whatever, you know? And then it's like, man, where did that come from? I don't talk like that, okay? Well, that's the real guy. Anyways, how do I get it? Oh, it's better to be together in a group, I think, to know someone. You know someone even less when you're together, alone. Did I say that right? It's better to know someone when you're in a group setting than it is to get to know them alone. Okay? So there's a dating issue. I highly, highly, highly discourage one-on-one dating before you get to know someone. You can know them before in that setting. Was I clear on that? I'm trying to talk too fast. Okay? All right? So, let me talk about some biblical principles, and then I want to get some other people here to share with you. You have to prepare yourself first. Before you even think about dating, before you think about relationship, before you think about getting married, you need to think about yourself first spiritually, emotionally, physically, and economically. You get that? You have to prepare yourself first and foremost spiritually, emotionally, physically, and financially. Some of you are prepared physically, but you're not prepared emotionally. Let's just be honest about that. Some guys and a lot of girls are not prepared to date or get in a serious relationship emotionally. They may be physically, but not emotionally. If you have, write it down or take a picture. I want you to go home and, I was going to put these verses up, but sometimes I do that and you guys kind of just read it. I want you to go back, okay, sometime the next few days and read these verses, read them closely, read them carefully. Corinthians 13:4-8, Galatians 5:22-23, Ephesians 5:22, and 1 Peter 3:1-7. Friends, I can't explain this, or I can't convey this or communicate this the best way I can. If my counsel to you is that I want you to be so prepared spiritually and emotionally before you even think about another person. In other words, where is your standing with God? What is your relationship with Jesus Christ? What do you understand what God means to have a person that you're going to share your life with for forever. Forever is a long time. We live in a society, well, I'll date her for a while and him for a while, figure out what's going on. But once you get in that dating thing, you're doing all this other stuff that never addresses your spiritual walk with the Lord. Please, if there's anything you get out of this workshop, that I can't stress that enough. Where are you spiritually with your relationship with Jesus Christ? I've said this before, I'll say this again. I tell couples, I want them to love God more than they love their husband and love their wife. I want my wife to love God more than she loves me. That's the level I'm talking about. Okay? How does God view marriage and divorce? You have to understand that. God ordained marriage as a husband and wife between a man and a woman, as a covenant and a commitment forever. God's definition of marriage is not because, God's reason for marriage is not because you love someone. God's reason for marriage is what? Commitment. Are you willing? It's not so much do I love this person, but am I willing to be committed to them for the rest of my life? Because, friends, some people will fall out of love at that, what they think love is when they're 22. But when you're 32 and you're 42 and you're 52, 62, that love is different. But I'm still committed. Okay? I'm still committed. And that's what God says. God says, I hate divorce. I hate divorce. I detest divorce. Why would you want to do something that God hates? You wouldn't do it if your spiritual walk with him is so connected. You would never do that, right? Thirdly, and I want some other friends to share with their experience of this, is because one of the questions I read is like, how do I know? How do I know? How do I know? The best answer is, per scriptures, is make decisions and choose wisely. Wisely has nothing to do with intellect, has nothing to do with intelligence. The best definition, the biblical definition that I think the Bible gives is wisdom is a gift from God for those who ask it. I love that definition. Wisdom is a gift from God for those who ask it. You must ask God for wisdom. You must ask God to show you the right thing. You must ask God, show me, convey to me, talk to me. Well, that doesn't happen unless you have a relationship with God. Agreed? You can't step into a relationship and now you're smack dab in the middle of it and you're sinking and you're swimming and you're trying to pull out. You say, God, show me. God says, whoa, where was I before you jumped into this mess? If you would have asked me for wisdom, you would have realized that this is not the place you should be going. If you would have asked me for wisdom, you would realize that that's not the person you should be moving forward to. If you would ask me for wisdom, you never would even have thought about marriage. Am I making sense? That's where it's got to start. And I know a lot of you are coming here thinking, well, Pastor Tim and all the other pastors are going to show me and answer all me these difficult questions, and you're giving me, it's all about God. Yes. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, it is. Yes. It's all about God first. All right? How much time do I have, Tony?
We got about
20 minutes? Okay. Probably went too fast. So, if there's three things that you can take out of this part of the workshop is prepare yourself first, spiritually, emotionally, physically, financially. How does God view marriage and divorce? Understand what God's view on marriage and divorce is, please. And then choose wisely. Ask God to give you wisdom, all right? So I'm going to ask Tony. I'm going to ask Pastor Bruce. I'm going to ask Eric. I'm going to ask Slade to come up and help me. Can you get some chairs? I want them to sit up here so you guys can see them. So we're not going to go through all the questions because look at all the questions we have, all right? There are a lot. Can you put it up here? Because I want them to see you. Yeah, put two there, two here. This works. I think 4 is fine, right? 4 is fine? Who? Oh, Pastor Paul, right. Pastor Paul and Sharon, are you helping us? All right, where'd you guys go? Pastor Bruce. You guys sit. You ran away. Pastor Paul? Okay, I'm going to start with this, because a lot of the questions they asked for this is like, I prepped this with Tony, so hopefully he won't be hurt. Okay, but I'm going to ask him answer this question. One of the questions we have here is like, how do I know that God has someone for me, and is it okay to be alone for the rest of my life? Okay, I'm not saying that's happening with Tony, but he's the only single person on this panel. Okay, so I'd like him to share with you maybe what does it feel like to be right now? Because by the way, if you remember Tony, right? He's financially secure. He was in the college career panel. He loves God. Whoa, right? He's tall, dark, and handsome. So I don't think he'll be alone for long. But nonetheless, he's single. And a lot of the questions I hear, I think a lot of people ask questions like, how do I know if dating's for me? How do I know when it's the right time? How do I know if it's the right person? So I thought Tony would give a great perspective on how to answer some of those questions. So Tony?
Can everybody hear me? All right, cool. I guess, I don't know, like for me, I think, I don't look like it, but I'm about to turn 32 years old in May, right after, during our youth rally. So it's going to surprise a lot of people. But I think for me, it's just like, I guess my journey is like, because of the world, I mean, even since I was a little kid, my brothers are here, we can laugh about it, but, we listened to a lot of the Backstreet Boys when we were little. I don't know if any of you guys know that. Because of that, you end up having this hopeless romantic trying to find that girl for you to spend the rest of your life with, because that's what happiness is. So since even when I was a little kid, I always wanted to know, like, I want to have a wife. I want to have a girlfriend and somebody to do life with. And, I just, you go through, your awkward years of high school and, grade school, and just trying to figure out, but then not find somebody, but your expectations like after college, I have my career, everything ready, bam, so it's gonna happen. Well, obviously, since I'm 32 years old today, it's still single. That hasn't happened for me yet. But through the whole journey of, you have to keep your eyes on the Lord, right? I pursued relationships and stuff like that with a lot of people, a lot of girls and stuff like that, to try to have her feel something that only the Lord could. And, that's for guys or girls, because you end up just, elevating them to, be God, and they can't be. They're not going to always be there for you all the time, and they're not going to be there, and that's really helped me through years of heartache. I mean, when Pastor Tim was just saying, like, hey, where were you, God, to help me during this time? It's like, if I asked the Lord a lot of times beforehand, I would have been okay. And I think, just put the Lord first. He'll bring people into your life. And that's totally true. You'll learn a lot more about people whenever you're in a group setting, right? And that's the best time to do it. And just enjoy the season you're in. Like, the fact that you're single, you can do so much more things in life that you're able to do that you don't have some other responsibility. So don't look at it as a hindrance, but look at it as a grateful joy. I mean, you can go on trips. I mean, hey, I want to go, go to Florida this weekend. If you're married, you can't really do that because you got to get it okay with your significant other. But there's so much that God can do with you, and it's okay to be single, So
let me ask you this: do you ever feel lonely? And if you do, how do you overcome that?
I think for me, to overcome the loneliness is just spending time with God. I mean, I didn't get to that point. It took me a long time because I tried to do every other avenue. I'd go home and I did every online dating, except for short of Tinder. I've done them all. So you need an expert. I made profiles on all of them. And then I realized it was just really empty until I just started spending time with God and just going into a life of serving Him.
Thank you. Just so you know, I have one couple that I'm doing their wedding this year, and they met on, what is it, christiansingles.com or whatever? Yeah. So, no, I mean, seriously. Hey, it's not as, what can I say? It's more prevalent now than you realize, especially as people get older. They just don't have time to meet other people. They're working or whatever in their lives. So it's just a means. It's a mechanism. At the end, though, all these other principles have to come in. So all I'm saying is that it's not as far out as you think anymore. Thank you, Tony. Let me ask you the next couple another question, or any of the couples. You can start. Is how did you come to the realization? Because a lot of the questions we're asking, like, how do I know this is the right person, or how do I know this is the one that I should continue dating or stopping? So maybe the two couples, could you kind of share a little bit about your thoughts on that, please?
Okay, there's two views on that, and we have went both views. First, the first view is that you just know. When you met this black person, you just have to know.
Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, it makes it easy.
Second view is that it's a struggle. First is 40%, and then 50% sure, and then 55% sure, all the way up to 60%. You never 100% sure. Right? You will never be, if you are ever 80 or 90% sure, then hey, you got to do something right, okay? Because you never know. Like even the one that said that, like, I'm absolutely sure when I met her is wrong, okay? So, but that was my approach. Most guys seem to think that way. You meet the girl and you said, she's the one, I know it, right? And the girl says, wait, back up here, right? And that is for Long and I, right? But so I prayed about it, and the Lord kept telling, go take the next step, right? And I got confirmation of how that works as well. Then finally, I think the turning point was that when she told me that she felt I'm the one she can pray with. Oh, yeah. And then that is when I know she's the one. Anything to add?
Okay. It's just, his story is a fairy tale story. But mine is the different, okay? I don't know because the guy's perspective different than the girls or what, but I'm not like, look and feel, oh, that's the person for me. No. He been rejected 3 times, so.
Yeah, I asked her, she rejected 3 times. No.
But because, I mean, I have a mindset that I'll be single, serve the Lord. I will traveling, you know, doing stuff that I want to do. But I pray. I say, Lord, can I be single? Because if I still have, you know, the need, to be lonely, when I be lonely, how I deal with it. So I pray, like, if you think I can be single, then just don't give me the desire or the want to meet people, you know, opposite sex people kind of thing, right? And if you want me to be married, and I pray, this is how, like the list, you know, I have the list. That's when I heard the pastor at that time, like, oh, you pray and God will, you know, give you. I don't pray for like fancy stuff, the reality. And you know, it just let the Lord give you that instead of your desire to want, oh, handsome guy and good-looking guy. Those things will pass. You know, after you marry, it's gonna disappear.
Your husband's sitting right next to you, by the way. Okay. I'm sorry. Some people said it's my fault. I introduced Tony, but they don't even realize that you were married. So could you introduce yourselves real quick so people know who they are?
I'm Pastor Paul, and this is my wife, Sharon.
Right. And how long have you been
Yeah.
married?
We'll be
17
16 years.
16
now.
And you have how many
Yeah.
children?
I have three
children. Okay,
Yeah,
exactly,
14,
all right.
12, and 10.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
that's the thing. It's just, pray and let God lead. And what the question? I
That's
forgot.
okay. Thank you. We'll come back. So I want to introduce the next couple for you, Eric and Lay, right? So you guys tell us a little about how long you've been married and a little bit about yourselves, and then one of the questions I think we want you to answer.
Hello? Okay, good. My name is Eric. This is my wife, Lei. We married about, less than a year. So we married last year. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, so, what else? Okay.
I saw a few of the questions on here asking how soon or how late you should date or start dating, or how long you should date before thinking about marriage. But I think biblically speaking, and from experience, if you're not ready thinking about marriage, you shouldn't start dating at all. And we've known each other for over 5 years before we actually started dating. And I think it's just the timing. And that's when we both thought that it was the right time and that we were ready thinking, about marriage. Then we started talking about dating. Yeah, so hopefully that answers some of your questions.
Okay, so one of the questions here is that should you date a non-Christian? So the first thing, my criteria is she has to be a Christian. So when I start dating my wife, I want to know whether she truly a Christian, right? So the thing that for me and my wife is that when we start dating, if you date, you go to movies, that's easy, right? So how do you know if that person is true belief? So Bible study. So I asked her to do Bible study with me, and get to know more of her that way, than just going to movies.
Okay, thank you. Maybe another question you can help answer is, that's great, and I think a lot of young people here would love to get that level. I mean, you can go sharing, you pray, you spend time. Can you focus a little bit maybe on early in your life when you weren't there yet? How did you overcome these temptation or these wanting to date before you were ready? Can you share a little bit about that? Does that make sense? When did you feel like you were ready? And how did that parallel with your spiritual walk?
Well, first of all, you got to be spiritually ready, right? Mm-hmm. You share about it. Spiritually ready, physically ready, and also financially ready. Mm-hmm. I know most of you are maybe in school, but you can't get ready. You can prepare, right? Spiritually. Mm-hmm. So you have to ask yourself a question. If you're gonna marry and you'll be a spiritual leader of your life, your family, mm-hmm. do you know how to pray? Mm-hmm. Do you have personal devotion? If you can't do any of those, how are you gonna lead your family, right? So you have to be ready in that area, and then God will lead you to the right person. And then that's when you pray, right? So I didn't know when I'm gonna meet my wife, right? So early in I did not know her until I went to a conference and we start, talking. So I did not know before that. So.
Good, thank you. Anybody else want to share on that?
Well, I did not know either. I always thought before I met Sharon, there was someone I was dating. And she was on paper the perfect one. She is the like a daughter of a pastor. She's, very well learned, like everything else, and like the typical Vietnamese criteria for being a good person, right? A good wife or a good whatever, right? But then I was want to serve God. I want to be a missionary, and she was want me to give that up because she wants to be with me, right? And so I was praying and I was struggling with that until one of my missionaries said that, well, if she is a nice girl, but if you married her, she'll be your ministry for the rest of your life, right? But if you think that God has a better plan for you for ministry-wise, then you have to decide wisely, right? So we made the decision to break up. And as soon as I break up, like a few months of that, I didn't know what I'm going to do, right? Like I've been in a relationship for like a couple of years, right? And then, so the Lord lead me to Hội đồng Giáo hạt, right? And I was sitting there and I was praying, Lord, please help me. I'm not sure I can handle this, right? And I walked up and she walked in. And I said, she's the one. Right? But back to, I noticed that a lot of questions has been about non-believers, right? I'm talking about the believers that aren't part of the criteria, called the plan that God has for you. But you both have to be called to get to ministry. Luang love missions, right? She go with me sometime. Sometimes she would stay home, be with the kids, so I could go myself. I travel like 3-4 times a year, up to like 6 to 8 times a year, so 2 to 3 weeks a time, right? So I need someone to support me at home, right? So someone like Luang or Sharon was perfect. But now moving to the non-believers, I say, don't do it, right? There are exceptional cases. I'm not saying that there aren't, right? And that is Lord ordained, right? Our best friend of mine, who I was the best man for, was like that, right? So he witnessed to her, she became a Christian, and then he married her. But you guys have heard of Thomas Stebbing? Who here has heard of Thomas Stebbing? Okay, just a few of you. He's one pastor of the church passed away. He's an American missionary who speaks Vietnamese very well, right? And he told me this, I always remember. He said that stay away from non-believers because it is always, and Nick, take a note of this, it's always better to be lonely than miserable.
Yeah.
Right?
I think so. I agree.
Anyway.
Well, thank you, Pastor Paul. I just want to ask Pastor Bing this question. As a pastor, as a husband, as a father, forgot my question. I was really thinking about that question. Oh, what are some of the issues that you've seen couples have to deal with conflict in those roles that you see that maybe now as a youth, they don't see it, but it becomes very practical once you step into a serious relationship?
Hello. I want to add that we've been married for, let's see, 33 years, right? We got married back in 1985. And to be honest, I agree with Pastor Tim. My wife was in the youth group as well. She was one of the leaders. I was one of the leaders there in the youth. For the life of me, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I didn't even think about getting married with the girls or anything like that. I mean, that's what the furthest thing from my mind. So we went to serve in the church together for the longest time that we know, and then finally something, I don't know how it happened, but kind of clicked. And then we started, to getting closer to each other, but that was about it. I mean, it took, and so we know each other for a long time, even before we decided to get married. As while we are serving. So anyway, as far as the conflict thing, I think my experience probably be the same thing a lot of other people experience. There's particularly in the first 2 years, there's a lot of conflicts, from marriage to where to live and all that issue that Pastor Tim brought up. So it's nothing new, but I think as far as how I resolved it or how I face it is the same thing as I would basically counsel other. I tell you, I'm a very stubborn person. Whatever my wife said, I probably don't agree with her, but that was me. But as time goes, one of the verse that I think every time I have issue, we always come to is, I guess you probably know about 1 Corinthians chapter 13, but this is really what the basis of my thinking. And love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrong. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. One of the things that I face with a lot of things is just like other couple is that husband and wife always reminded, whenever they have issue in the past, probably years ago comes up. Just being reminded, it never dies. Those are the things that really can really damage the relationship. But these are the things that to me is the basis. You have to love each other enough to basically continue to say, yeah, take the role of okay, I'm wrong, and then work it out. But one of the person that I like the most, the story. This may be funny, but there's one guy who was asking this couple who's like 87 years old, married for 50, 60 years, and I said, well, what keeps your marriage, lasting that long? And he said, in life, there's things that you like to do is you can either be right or in an argument with your wife or your husband, you can either be right or happy. You can decide to be right or happy. But for me, I decide to be happy more than right. So that's how we stay married. So you don't have to be right all the time. But that's what love is, commitment. It's not like, okay, I'm right all the time or she's right all the time. So if on that basis, you may extend your marriage a little bit longer.
Okay. Well, I know Mushu Bing is a very happy man, so you must be wrong a lot too, okay?
Yeah, I'm wrong.
All right. Quick question for Tony, then I want to ask Pastor Paul and Kosharim. Tony, a lot of our youth here are younger. They're probably in high school, okay? And then to them, they're struggling because I think they understand the principles. They know they need to put God first. They know, but the world that we live in puts a lot of pressure on them to date, a lot of pressure on them to have someone. Can you maybe share, at that age and where you are today, how you could help them overcome some of those peer pressure or need to date at such an early age if they're not spiritually, emotionally, physically, and financially ready?
I think that is a good question. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that would really help with loneliness, at least coping now, looking back in my own life, is just you just need to spend time with each other. Today, what I've kind of noticed is even though we're more connected than ever because of Twitter's, Facebook, any kind of social media, you see somebody post something on Instagram, you like it or whatnot, but you don't get to know the person, right? They like your posts and stuff like that, but you never spend time with them.
Yeah.
And that's something that we're missing, and that's how you become prone, because when you look on social media, everyone posts like their best picture, right?
Yeah.
Happy couple, best boba tea, best everything, right? But you don't see like the pain behind that.
Yeah.
And that's what you want to do is you don't want to live in that superficial world, but step into relationships with other people and be open to that.
And I think that's some great advice. Don't live according to what we think the world sees or portrays. I mean, God knows the heart of the issues of our lives. And if we spend more time with God to deal with those issues before we try to portray ourselves as something different to this world, I think we will be in a lot better place. Thank you. So I want to ask Pastor Paul and Coach Sharon, sometimes people this question is more for those who maybe are married or in a serious relationship. Stress is something we all deal with. And stress in our individual lives, then you compound that with the stress of your spouse or your mate has, and then you have a lot of stress. Any way you can share with them, how do you cope with that? How do you cope with the stresses of life individually and then compounded because now you have a stress of a spouse that's added upon it?
As you know, probably right now I'm under one of the most stressful time in my life, having cancer and having seemed like the ability not to provide for my family, and being an orphan's mentality where I like to do everything. I can't even do that. I just have to lie home and rest, right? That creates a lot of internal stress in me. That up to a point where sometimes I blew up, right? And of course, my Sharon has to work, and she come home very tired and stressed as well. So we got very stressed person sharing the house with 3 kids who don't really deserve to be yelled at all the time. But they do get yelled at all the time because we are just still human, and sometimes the physical ailment come out in our stress as well as the emotional and everything rolled up together. And of course, with everything that happened to me right now, I really feel bad for my kids. But one thing, we can definitely help one another. And we try this, and we pray to the Lord. We know that the Lord is the Father of the Father, and He's the one that works miracles in our life, including removal of stress, including the removal of physical ailment. Whether or not we see God through our spiritual eyes or our human eyes. I think usually what we do is that we see God through our human eyes. We try to solve stress by what we can do as humans and not let God alleviate stress to what He can do supernaturally. Amen. Right? And because of that, but the more we lean on that, the more then you will find the problem will solve practically itself. I still yell at the kids. They can vouch for it, right? But I'm telling them the less now. I read, update, spend more time with the Lord now, and of course. Sharon, I know, as well, encouraged me just to relax, being home. She do everything, which makes me feel bad too, right? But I know that seeing God and let God handle through spiritually better than what I humanly can ever do.
Just a little thing to add to it. Just the Bible is really comfort, and because you don't see God, but through His Word that really encourages you. And, it's just time that when you read the Bible, somehow that word is like, it's affected you. And that helped me to cope with what we have to deal with now.
Thank you. I guess that'd be a great place to end. I'm just going to close with this. This one last question. I just feel like it maybe can summarize everything. Is it better to settle for a Christian or find a soulmate? I guess my response would be, why are the two mutually exclusive? If if you are right with Christ, if your relationship with Christ is the foundation, your soulmate will be a believer in Jesus Christ, isn't it? Friends, don't settle for anything. Accept what God gives you. And if you live according to His will, He will bring you the person that you don't have to settle for anything. Amen? Let's stand and let's pray, and we'll close this session. All right, could everybody just close your eyes, bow your head, and let's spend time in prayer? Dearly Father, once again, we come to you because we realize that you are our everything. And if it doesn't start there, then all these issues we brought up will just be searching and grasping and looking for answers and come up with nothing. I pray that every person here understands this very important issue, that God created us to have fellowship with Him and then fellowship with each other, to love Him first, then love each other. And it starts there. I pray that our friends here will live wisely, live according to your word. Do not be foolish as the foolish of this world, but be wise of the person that leans on you for all the things that they're looking and searching for. Lord, I also pray at this time for our couples and our leaders here today. I want to lift up especially Pastor Paul and his wife, Golan. Lord, we believe with all our heart and all our faith that you are God that can heal and can transform and can restore and renew. If according to your will, Lord, we pray that you can alleviate the pain and the cancer in our brother, and you'll be a wonderful testimony to a living God that we serve and we believe in. We thank you for their life. Thank you for what they've done in serving you and their children and their family as a testimony for your Lord glory. So we put them in your protection, your guide. I pray for Eric and Leigh as they're starting their lives together as husband or wife. Let them to be a testimony of what it means to be godly men and godly women, and that they too can use their lives as a testimony for all of us to see that you can bring people together and a life that is a testimony to your glory. Pray for Pastor Bruce and his family, his leadership, as a pastor, as a husband, as a father, also working. Lord, I know it's difficult challenges, so we pray and blessings upon them too. Pray for Tony, Lord. Thank you for using him in his singleness at this moment. Pray that at this time, in this place, it's okay to understand, to wait for your voice, wait for your direction. And I know, Lord, that you use him mightily as well. And I pray for every person here. In your holy, precious name we pray. Amen. Okay, Tony, I think you have some announcements, right?
All right, so we're going to have a little 10-minute intermission, and then we'll go into worship, so it gives the worship team time to warm up. All right. So go out and stretch your legs, grab something to drink, and then we'll come back ready to worship.